This is Nova, and you're listening to the Supernova Shift podcast. Today's episode is a deep dive into Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king of Rome. And I'm going to go over some of his important points. His private journal has become one of the most influential Stoic texts ever written, and I read the book personally in French, translated from ancient Greek, more specifically Koine Greek, and it is written in the most beautiful, poetic, flourished language. It is quite hard to read, but it touches the soul at its deepest when you understand its true meaning. I hope that this episode will convince you to read the book. I'm about to break down his main ideas on life and death and how you should live your life as a virtuous man or woman for a happy life. All of it in modern, girly terms to make this episode more fun and easy to understand. If you've listened to our previous episode on the Stoic mindset, then you are probably on board with the benefits that this brings. But if you haven't watched the previous episode, I'm going to give a quick summary. This is going to help you reduce your anxiety and your overthinking. It's going to give you a new way of seeing life, and it's going to increase your self-discipline and resilience. But most of all, it's going to clarify the values and purpose that you want. If you actively practice the mindset that this brings, it's going to make you less reactive to judgment, failure, or change. That is, of course, if you actively practice. And it's going to anchor you in something more eternal and unshakable, and overall make you live a happier, fuller life, where you are grounded in the present, which is something we all want, right? Happiness is something we all chase, but it's already there. You just have to create it. As usual, we're going to start with a quote like we always do. And this is one of Marcus Aurelius's most famous quotes. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. In our modern context, you could say that you should only pay attention to the things that you can control. Everything outside your control is not worth stress or overthinking. Your mind is where everything starts, and that is where true strength lies. So who exactly was Marcus Aurelius, and what are the Meditations? In the book that I have read, the book starts with a short introduction of the emperor's life. And if Hippolyte Taine wrote that Marcus Aurelius was the most noble soul to have ever lived, who was that soul? To better understand his thoughts and his philosophy, we need to better understand the man. He was born in the year 121 after Christ, and he ruled as Roman emperor from 161 to 180 after Christ. He has had a hard life, but before that what looked like happy early years. He was the son of a rich family living in what we call today Andalusia, in a luxurious villa surrounded by beautiful gardens. He lost his father quite early and was homeschooled by the best teachers and philosophers of his time. He was described early on as grave, sincere, and fragile health-wise, and a child with a passion for philosophy. His education was based on the culture of the mind, but also the body. At only 12 years old, he wanted to live under the strict norms of Stoicism. He learned the arts, like drawing and painting, singing, dancing, poetry, songs, but he still preferred philosophy. The dearest teacher to his heart was Cornelius Fronton. We have letters he sent to his master, who taught him to read and write with such flourish. And he talks to him from his heart in this letter. When he was a teenager, the emperor died, and his successor, having no children, actually adopted Marcus Aurelius so that he could be his heir. Marcus Aurelius moved to the royal palace, married Faustine, the daughter of the current empress. With her, he had 13 children, even when the deaths of many of his beloved came to cloud the happiness of his life. He has had a hard life, as I said before. Wars, disease, like the Black Death, and natural catastrophes like devastating floods. When barbarians invaded the empire once more, another of its infinite wars, its citizens were so devastated by famine and disease that the emperor decided to sell all the valuables in his palace, diamonds, gold, paintings, vases, and all of this to fund his war. Even his wife sold all her dresses, her jewelry, and her valuable clothing. Marcus Aurelius would always fight with his troops at the front line, which not all leaders had the courage to do, and his wife even accompanied him on some trips to help heal the wounded, earning the name of Mother of the Camps. Marcus Aurelius hated war, and when he fought, it was solely to protect his people. In the end, he died in a military camp from a disease that he had contracted. He was one of the 5 good emperors, and was widely known, still today, for his wisdom, restraint, and emphasized self-discipline, moral clarity, and, most of all, the acceptance of fate. He studied his beloved philosophy during his lifetime. We now have traces of his deepest inner thoughts through his personal journal entitled Meditations, Thoughts to Myself. It is thought unlikely that it was written to be published. It was more like his diary, I guess you could say. Through his raw and humble guide, we can see how the fragile, quiet emperor could become so strong, disciplined, and prompt to action and decisions on command, but also how he stayed kind and, most of all, good, no matter what life threw in his way. Okay, so we're going to go more in detail into the main themes that go into the book, and the first one is the one that I talked about in the previous episode, one of the most common ones when it comes to talking about meditations is to control what you can and accept what you can't. And that's really important in the book because it's the key, the core, I would say, of Stoicism. And it can be very liberating because you stop giving your energy away to things that you cannot impact. And by doing so, you protect your energy and time. But I would go further and say that Marcus Aurelius talks about the importance of not participating in gossip. He does not say the word gossip, but you see what I mean. And most importantly, not criticizing others. It's a simple but overlooked point that many people do not practice at all. Criticizing others is just a low vibrational behavior and a lose-lose situation. You make yourself bitter. You start radiating negativity, which others can perceive in some ways. And there's a chance the person that you're criticizing will find out about it, hurting your relationship with them and your relationship with yourself. You're hurting yourself and others, and it's just not a good thing. I know that I've been catching myself every time I start criticizing someone, not in a bad way. I don't think we criticize others to necessarily harm them. We just do it, this person said that, or why does this person act like that kind of stuff. It just doesn't matter. Another thing that Marcus Aurelius talks a lot about is death to better appreciate the life that you're living. And life is short and you should use it well. A lot of people know this. It's obvious, it's simple, but I think a lot of important truths are very simple and we ignore them. He said, do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. So if you remember the previous episode, Memento Mori, remember you will die, to help better appreciate our lives, that makes me think of prioritizing my time. Even though I'm young, when you start to realize that compared to the infinity of time, you will be dead in the snap of the universe's fingers, you rethink what actually matters and you stop thinking about other people's opinion of you. Marcus Aurelius says that you are already old, and time is not something that we abundantly have, it's just an illusion. He says you must have a guiding principle. I like to think of this as a driving force. You must do everything with purpose, in alignment with your goal, and do absolutely nothing without a clear purpose. Another thing that he emphasizes is that virtue is the only true good. What does he mean by living with virtue? It's not written clearly, this means this, like a step-by-step guide. Of course, it's his thoughts, so it's a little more complicated to read. But I've gathered from the book the main qualities he thinks a man should have, a man that is living with virtue. These include wisdom, courage, compassion, kindness, piety, liberality, justice, and self-discipline. On the other hand, he says that someone brutal, childish, disloyal, greedy, tyrannical, and ferocious is a character he refers to as dark. He emphasizes living with simplicity and having fewer things, embracing fewer things. In our modern world, that means, at least to me, not succumbing to our consumer society, so buying every useless, polluting gadget you see. In the Roman times, it was a bit different, of course. He said that you should hate the way rich people live, but in the Roman times, rich people would live quite differently than rich people nowadays. We had a different definition. For example, women would have all these silk gowns embroidered with gold. They would, eat food until they vomited, and then they would eat again. It was a common practice, a little weird, but they would live in these huge palaces and villas and have paintings and vases. So, of course, it was quite different back then. The fourth point that I'm going to go over is that death is natural and not to be feared. It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live, is another of his famous quotes. Marcus Aurelius says that a man who lives in fear of death is a child. And I quite agree with him, because he says that death is a natural thing, and fighting against nature's normal flow, is abnormal. When you think about it, this means that in our world today, a lot of adults are still children in their minds. And many people fear death, but a rational being knows that death should be welcomed with calm, because it is the most natural and logical thing in the world. Every single living thing or being or animal on this planet will be born and will live and will age and will die. He states that death is also like a new opening, because we return to the earth where we came from. And as our corpse transforms into soil once more, we nourish more life and welcome more souls onto this earth. His next point is quite interesting. He said, this is not a direct quote, but this is transcribed into my own words. But where are the billions of corpses of people and animals who have lived before us? They didn't just disappear. How is there space for all the dead? They don't vanish altogether. They just transformed into something new. They return to their sources: blood, soil, air, fire, water. And this links actually quite nicely to the next point, which is that everything is connected. And in order to live a happy life, a happy, harmonious life, you should live in harmony with nature. He tells a lot about living in accordance with nature. But what does this really mean? It's not just going in the forest for a walk. Of course not. It's a little deeper than that. You could break it down into universal, human, and individual nature. Universal nature, to him, means accepting fate, so things like death, your death, other people's death, understanding that everything is interconnected, and trusting the bigger order, even when it's painful. If something happens to you, it was meant to be part of your timeline. He says that if something bad happens to you, you should just not worry because it was meant to happen to you. The second one is human nature. We are rational, social, and moral beings. So to live according to our nature is to use reason, treat others with justice, contribute to society, and act with self-restraint. Think about your duty in the world, not just personal gain. Before you do something, think about how your goal will bring good to the community. Helping others is helping yourself, because we are all part of the interconnected whole, what he calls the whole with a capital W. So for example, with my podcast, I think about it this way. I love doing it, it's my passion, and I get to learn about new things, but also I get to help others in learning about those things. And I really hope that is going to help some people and interest them truly. The last one left is your individual nature. This means your role in this life, your limits, your personality, and your unique calling. You have to accept who you really are, and you shouldn't try to be someone you're not. This sounds obvious, but a lot of us do this unconsciously. We try to copy others or trends we see, or we compare ourselves to other people, especially teenagers. And for the next point, I'm going to talk about love, forgiveness, and nature's flow. Love is related to living in accordance with nature. Let me explain. For example, Marcus Aurelius says we must love other humans even if they hurt us or have sinned. And that's because we were all born to work together and cooperate. He says fighting one another is against the natural flow of nature because we were all born from what he refers to as the whole, W-H-O-L-E. You could say that we're all part of an interconnected organism, and hurting others would be hurting ourselves. It makes me think of this mental image that all humans are a big family, all brothers and sisters, and that we must love, forgive, and offer compassion to one another. Hating does absolutely nothing, and it tarnishes your soul, at least according to him. Loving can only do good. But how do you love even those who offend you, provoke you on a daily basis? He says you should imagine that they are your parents and that they are sinning involuntarily or by accident. And mostly that soon you will both be dead. So why does hate matter? I think it's a pretty efficient guide, in my opinion. This passage that I'm about to read is a passage from the book, and I really recommend reading it in the morning if you deal with difficult people at school, at work, or in your close circle. This really helps me forgive and love even those who get on my nerves. Before I read this quote, remember that this was translated from Koine Greek, and this is merely an English translation, not a word-for-word copy, but it should be pretty faithful. Here we go. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, "Today I shall meet with meddling, ungrateful, violent, treacherous, envious, and uncharitable men. All this has befallen them through ignorance of real good and evil. But I have seen that the nature of the good is the beautiful, and of the bad is the ugly, and that the nature of the wrongdoer is akin to mine, not of the same blood or birth, but sharing in the same mind and possessing a share of the divine. So none of them can harm me, for none can involve me in what is degrading. I cannot be angry with my kinsman or hate him, for we have been born for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper and lower teeth. To work against one another, then, is contrary to nature, and it is acting against one another to be vexed and to turn away." End of the quote. I think this beautifully ties with unity, forgiveness, and love for all mankind. Of course, this has different levels of understanding. The entire book has different levels of understanding. I think you definitely see this and understand this differently at the age or the place in your life when you read it. An adult will not read it the same as a teenager. A 30-year-old will not read it the same as a 50-year-old. And when it comes with love, I don't mean it's more of a mindset. I don't mean that you should hug all your haters and go, oh my God, I love you, and force yourself to love everyone. That is not possible, of course. I mean, it's more of a mindset to be at peace with yourself. Like telling yourself, to not carry hate with yourself all the time. And you're actually, it sounds like you're doing it for other people, but you're actually doing it for yourself. It's for your inner peace. A lot of Stoic philosophers have emphasized to not be controlled by your emotions or your opinions. And detachment, serenity, and objectivity are synonyms for inner peace. Marcus Aurelius says that opinions are just opinions, of course. He gives the example of a precious stone. I liked this example because if an emerald, for example, is criticized, will it lose its value? No, it won't. Same for everything. Criticizing a diamond or gold is not going to make them lose their value. Criticizing a tree or a flower or literally anything won't make it lose their value. So it goes the same for you. If people criticize you, it doesn't matter. Your worth is still the same. The next point is on intelligence, logic, and opinions. Marcus Aurelius deeply respected reason, learning, and the disciplined use of intelligence, but not for the sake of ego or status. In Meditations, he constantly warns against pride in intellectual abilities, vain argument, and the empty pursuit of opinions. But, on the other hand, he praises the sincere pursuit of truth, wisdom, and self-mastery. Our reasoning faculty, the hegemonikon, or ruling mind, is our greatest power. It's what makes us different from other species, our faculty to reason. But it must be disciplined, clear, and self-governed. He values learning that leads to virtue and the use of our opinions to seek truth, not for reputation, gossip, or showing off, which a lot of people do. I mean, a lot of people will learn a phrase in Latin and then, say it so that they sound smarter. I'm not name dropping anyone, but to illustrate what I just said, I have this quote. What is the goal of virtue, after all, except a life that flows in accordance with nature? So learn constantly, but also live accordingly. He talks about intellectual humility, aka not thinking you know everything all the time, because that is, of course, not true, and it will never be. Here's another nice quote. If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change, for I seek the truth, by which no one was ever harmed. I think that really sums up the Emperor's personality. Now, we have some key reminders and lessons. I wrote this down because at some point in the book, he says to not be afraid to ask for help. It's a very short paragraph. It's like 3 sentences. He just says, do not be afraid to ask for help, and you are allowed to achieve your goal by being helped by others because we are social beings and it is okay. It's just a simple reminder. The next one has become my goal now that I've read about it and that I've realized how important it is. It's to speak little and only say what is necessary in few words as possible. Now, of course, once again, when you read things like that. You shouldn't take it as the absolute truth or, do it exactly as it says. I'm not saying you should be less authentic or laugh less loudly or be the mysterious person, not at all. What I mean is this. I read this text from Epictetus because actually after the Marcus Aurelius meditations, there were some thoughts from Epictetus. And he says that when you have to express yourself, do not speak of the first common things that come to your mind, like gossip or food or, complaints, the news, the weather, or whatever. Most of all, do not speak of people to criticize them, praise them, or compare them. He says that with the people you live with, like your family, your friends, your partners, or your coworkers, you can speak of deeper, interesting matters. But if you're surrounded by strangers, don't speak. That actually reminds me of a video that I watched recently of an influencer called Tamcor. She also has an amazing podcast that you can check out. It's called Self-Obsessed. But it reminds me of a video that she made where she said that talking all the time or arguing all the time about vain things with other people, especially strangers, is just you're giving your energy away to people that don't even matter. And it was a good way to protect your energy, to stop arguing with random people. But when it comes to your family or your dear ones, when it comes to arguing about something to keep the relationship together, then it's worth it. The last point is those who sin against themselves. It's a good point to remember when you're trying to forgive someone who provokes you, or your biggest hater or a coworker that really annoys you. Those who are unjust are doing themselves a disservice by making themselves mean. Vice is a harm to yourself. Epictetus, another giant in Stoic philosophy, said that when someone acts badly, he is the one who suffers. He has corrupted his own character. Marcus Aurelius said something very similar, and it is that the wrongdoer wrongs himself. The unjust man is unjust to himself. He makes himself evil. They're saying that when people act unjustly, they do so out of ignorance of the good and therefore deserve pity and compassion. There are so many more interesting, eye-opening points in the book. So once again, I highly recommend that you read it for yourself. I could make even a third episode on the Stoic mindset, honestly, because there's just so much to say, especially when it comes to the Marcus Aurelius meditations. You could talk about his writings for hours, but for the sake of this episode, I don't want to make it too long. The last part of this episode is, how do you apply his teachings today? Like a modern integration, micro habits, mindset shifts, and all that. So a lot of people nowadays start or end their day with journaling. And it's really a powerful practice that can really help. I mean, even Marcus Aurelius would do it. We still have his meditations to this day. And journaling about your gratitude or reflections on your life or your thoughts can really do a lot for your mental health. Now, if you don't like, or you don't have the time, or you don't want to journal every single day, you don't have to. Honestly, I don't think anybody journals every single day of their life. Marcus Aurelius didn't, or at least I don't think he did. But journaling about your thoughts, I don't know, maybe once a week, on the weekend, a few times a week is already pretty good, and it can do a lot for you, especially gratitude. With gratitude, some people say that you should write 1 to 5 things that you're grateful for every day. I say that you don't even have to write it down. You can if you want to, but I think you should pick one thing you're grateful for and fully immerse in the experience, like feel the gratefulness. And actually immerse in the experience. The second thing is my goal, the thing I've been trying to improve, is to pause before saying something or reacting. Is what you're going to say useful, purposeful? Is it going to bring value? Is this situation under your control if you're about to react? It can be a very useful thing to think about before you speak. The third one is letting go of needing approval or praise. It is an absolute waste of time. I think most people do it, like 99% of people do it, and it harms your mental health. And just for so many reasons, like you don't need other people's approval, or especially being super attached to other people's praise. It's just not the vibe. If you've read the book, The Courage to Be Disliked, this really good book that I think I might do an episode on, it also insists on letting go of approval or praise. They say specifically to deny the desire for recognition. Number 4 is to practice voluntary discomfort. So things like cold showers, being in new situations, new places, intermittent fasting. It can be literally anything. A new route to school or to work, trying new hobbies, new activities. It's gonna expand your vision, and your courage is going to expand, like, because you try new things, and it takes a bunch of courage to actually do it, and discipline. It's going to increase your discipline. The 5th thing is that you could read a passage from Meditations each morning. It has become my new Bible. I love reading a little passage of it in the morning or in the afternoon or whenever I need to, or the Bible if you're religious. And the 6th one is to focus on duty, not your results. That's a pretty quick one. And the 7th one is to prioritize your time by identifying what you have control over, and reflecting on death a little once in a while can help you appreciate your life more. And by prioritizing your time, taking what actually matters, what you actually want for your life, because you can't do everything at once. That's literally impossible. Now, we're going to go on a little reflection section to end this episode, and I encourage you to reflect on the following things by yourself. I'm going to help you get what passage hit you the hardest and what are you struggling with. So at some point, Marcus Aurelius said, very specifically, not to laugh loudly and be sad the next second. This weirdly referred to my personal mood swings, and I felt very guilty for doing this myself sometimes. It's weird that he specifically talked about this point, but I guess it is a thing. Then the second question is, how did it make you think differently about life, school, or social pressure? Well, it did make me realize that a lot of things are, or how futile most things are, like being so scared people will judge your every move in public. But the truth is, nothing really matters the second you start to reflect on death. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be really empowering and beautiful and motivating, especially, at least for me. I just find it that reflecting on death helps you prioritize your life, or the things that actually matter in your life, and especially encourage me to do the things that I want to do and to be proactive and to actually do the things that I'm scared to do. How did you feel when reading the book? Well, it had a big influence on my feelings. When I read the passage about loving other people, I was actually sitting in a bus next to my best friend with the entire class in my bus. And the passage that I was reading, it was so beautiful and had such powerful examples that I just stared out the window for so many minutes. And I had this urge to just hug my best friend next to me and hug all the people in the bus, all my classmates, even if I didn't know them that well, my family, my neighbors, everyone I knew, and tell them how much I loved them, how much I actually cared about them. It was a very powerful, life-changing feeling. And honestly, if some passages in the book make you feel that way too, it's very worth it. To end with a powerful final quote, I have this one. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. That's another of his really famous quotes. So here's your cue to be the best version of yourself instead of criticizing others. Go live your life. If you found value in this, share it with someone who needs some grounded calm in their life. I really pray that you will read this book and open your eyes to the world anew. See you very, very